Hello, my name is Jess Adamson. Welcome to the Breakthrough podcast, brought to you by Breakthrough Mental Health Research Foundation, Australia's only dedicated mental health research organisation. In this series, we'll be talking to courageous people who share their personal stories about their lived experience of mental health issues. We'll also be talking to researchers in the field to get an understanding of the how and why of mental illness. Mental illness is going to be the biggest health challenge in our lifetime. It consumes lives, it ruins lives, it takes lives. But it's time the question was answered. Why does it happen? And more importantly, how can we stop it? If you find anything spoken about in today's episode distressing, please contact Mental Health Emergency on 131465. Debbie Ryan is a passionate advocate for mental health and for mental health research. 2 years ago, Debbie's daughter Maddy took her own life. She was bright, bubbly, and was studying to be a teacher, but Maddy had depression and severe anxiety. She was bullied relentlessly throughout school and afterwards. She rarely spoke about her mental health to others. Debbie has written a book called Bullied to Broken about Maddy and has launched an online store in Maddy's memory called Be Kind Co, selling wellbeing products and encouraging others to be kind. Debbie's desire is to share her story so no family goes through what she did. Debbie, welcome to our Breakthrough podcast. I want to start by asking you what Maddy was like as a little girl.
She was happy and bubbly, and she just loved animals, any dog or any animal, she was drawn to. And, she was like my little doll. I used to dress her up and in hats and ribbons, and, people would stop me and say, "Oh my gosh, she's so gorgeous." And she was always gorgeous. Yeah. She started playing the piano when she was 6, and she was really talented. She was just beautiful to listen to, and she was good at netball, and she was just a beautiful kid.
So quite confident in those early years, no signs of stress or challenges when she was younger?
No, she was sensitive, and that was evident. From when she was a little baby, she hated being told off, or, she would get easily upset, I guess. But, yeah, very confident. I mean, she was an excellent netballer, was always their leading goal scorer at school, and she had a lot of friends. She was very popular in primary school. Actually, she was popular all the way through, really, but she just never saw it as time went on.
When did you first start seeing signs that there might be trouble and challenges for Maddy?
When she started high school, my father was dying. He had mesothelioma, and my sister and my mum and I nursed him. So I was a bit absent in her first year of high school. She would say to me that she wasn't fitting in and the girls were starting to be mean, and I just didn't really take it on board, thinking it was just an adjustment and things would get better. It wasn't until the second year of high school that the way she spoke changed. And she was very moody, and she would say things like, "I'm dumb, I'm fat, I'm stupid, that's why people don't like me. She said, I feel alone, I don't have any friends." They had started to, I guess, exclude her peer group in many ways. She would say I spent my lunchtime in the toilet, just so I could get away from them. It was the second year probably was when I noticed the change in her. And I think by that time the scarring had already happened. Perhaps, if I had have noticed the signs in year 8, Maybe I could have removed her from the school or got some intervention earlier for her. But by the time I had realised what the bullying was doing to her mental health, I think the damage was already done.
How did you respond to her emotions at that time? Because she's going through tricky teenage years, and I'm sure as a parent it's easy to say you'll get through this and you don't want to give it too much oxygen.
Yeah. I was the one she relied on wholly, really, during those years. She would text me all the time about everything. It wasn't until she said, "I don't want to be here anymore, Mum. It hurts. Life is just too hard," that I thought, no, I have to do something to help her. So I tried to get her to see someone, and she wouldn't go. There was an incident where one of them had threatened to hurt her if she'd come back to school, and I found her in a corner screaming before she went to school. And I said to her then, we need to get you help so that you can develop the strategies to be able to deal with what you're dealing with. And she said no. She said, if people find out that I'm not coping with this, they won't like me. It will just be another reason people don't like me.
How old was she then, Debbie, and how hard was it for you as a parent to watch that, given that she didn't want to seek help?
Well, it's you just have a continual feeling of sickness in your stomach all the time, every day. As much as she feared going to school, I would fear her going to school. By the time I had sort of begged her to let's get out, she didn't have the courage. She said it's going to happen to me no matter where I go. So I guess those years I felt helpless. The school were no support to me at all. As much as I had contacted them at various times, there was never any feedback. I was never directed to any bullying policies. There was never any support network for me. Maddy said there was no support network for her. She felt like she had no one to go to at school. I said, you could try the pastoral care there, so that you've got someone to talk to at school. But she would, she had a couple of girlfriends that were good to her during those years. So she did tend to rely on those a bit as well as me. But I looked at other things, natural things, various smoothies and things I'd try and give her to give her extra vitamins and so that she didn't get sick, and because the stress of it on her was awful.
So she's in her teenage years at high school.
Yeah.
Describe how brutal this bullying was. What kind of things was she exposed to?
Well, initially it was exclusion when they were younger. And, they weren't, they'd been to my house, these children. I liked the children. She liked them. She chose them as her friends. They had nice families, but I don't know why. Maybe she was just easy. She was an easy target. But it was exclusion initially. And then as the years went on, it became nastier. They would start saying things over Facebook, start rumours she said were not true. She never knew from one week to the next whether they would include her or exclude her. And, as much as I knew she was struggling, I just wasn't completely convinced that it was as bad as what she said it was. And it wasn't until schoolies, and there were the relationships were fractured by this time. And I had gone to schoolies with her to make sure that, she was okay. And not that I was there, but, I was there to help her unpack and all of that sort of thing. anyway, when I got there, not one of them looked me in the eye. They looked up at the sky. They just turned away. I think there was one girl out of the big group that were there that came over and spoke to me.
How was schoolies for Maddy?
Well, I had ended up staying at McLaren Vale with a girlfriend, so that I just said 24 hours a day I'm there. You just call me and I'll come and pick you up. She hated it. She didn't like it at all and couldn't wait for it to be over. But she was seeing her boyfriend at the time, her childhood sweetheart. So she wanted to be there with him. So she decided to stay. But when I left her, I got in the car and it just hit me like a wave of emotion, because I realised, everything she'd said was true. Like, they made her feel invisible, and they made me feel invisible. And she'd put up with that for 5 years, and I'd only put up with that for one instant in time. And it was then, but that was just years later. And what she had endured, I just thought, my gosh, you are so tough. You are so strong to have been able to get through. She got an 89 on her ATAR. She just, in her world, she had to be perfect. That manifested in her more and more over the years, that if she was perfect, then people would like her. And I think that for her was, well, I know it was a fact, why she wouldn't get help, because she didn't want people to think she wasn't perfect. And I do believe that, it's that stigma of mental health, that people don't get help because, they are afraid that people will judge them. And we need to change that as a community. We need to make mental health easier to speak about, suicide easier to speak about.
We absolutely do. It was physically and emotionally exhausting for her, wasn't it, over the years? The taunting, the exclusion, the physical violence in some cases.
Yes, it manifested in her in anxiety and at times depression. Not that she was ever clinically diagnosed, but, you could just tell. I mean, when she was having a panic attack or anxiety attack, I could see her heart beating through her blouse, or, it manifested in her in a physical way. And at those times when her anxiety was peaked, it was really, really hard to get through to her. It's almost like she was so trapped in that space that it didn't matter what anyone said to her, you know. And it was really hard to calm her down at those times.
And there was a moment that you realised that she was self-harming?
Yes. I realised I was cleaning her room. She was in year 11, and I was cleaning her room, and I found a knife that had blood on it, and not a lot of blood, but a bit of blood. And I confronted her about it, and I said, "Show me, your arms." And there were marks on her arms, just like little puncture marks, really. And I said to her, if you're doing this to yourself, we need to get you some help. And I said, I will get an intervention if you don't go and see someone. And she said, if you ever do that to me, I will take my own life. So I never did. I never forced anything on her. I just tried to be there for her, to support her. I found out after she died, she had been self-harming since she was 13. So it had started in year 8. And I never saw it. So as a parent, I felt like, how did I miss that? How did I not see that on my child? I do remember, like, you think about things, and I do remember saying to her, once, what happened to your arm? What are those marks? And she said, I fell into a rose bush. And she was a bit of a klutz, so I just sort of thought, okay, I'll take that. But I just didn't think, I don't honestly remember ever even knowing what that was, self-harm. When I found the knife, I thought she'd tried to end her life, that I'd panicked. But it wasn't. It was just she wanted to release the pain. Well, that's what I found out later. The year before she died, they attacked her in a nightclub, and I found a knife again then, and I rang Lifeline because she just, after that attack, she said, I'm never going to be free of them, Mum. They hate me. They'll always hate me. I'm 22 years old now and I'm still not free of them. And I ended up calling Lifeline just because I didn't know what else to do. And they said, look, it doesn't mean she wants to end her life. Just means she wants to release that pain and, get her the help that she needs. But by that time, it was, I think, too late,
You didn't ever think that she would take that final step, though, did you? You knew that she was really struggling, but you never thought she'd actually take her own life?
No. She had threatened it a few times over the years, but I would say to her, if you love me, you could never do that to me. And she would always say, I do love you, Mum, So I believed that it would never happen. It was just her way of releasing her pain, and I was always there to support her and love her and offer whatever I could to help her. I just honestly thought it was just her releasing her pain and that she would never do that ever.
And from the outside looking in, Maddy did have what many would say was the perfect life, didn't she? A very healthy, happy home life.
Yep.
She had a privileged upbringing, family and pets, and a great house and a good school.
She had everything. If I guess there was a perfect perfection, she was it. She was just beautiful, and kind, just so sweet, and would do anything for anyone who was struggling. She was there. She had an affinity with children who had challenges. So she was studying a disability component in her teaching degree, and the staff said she was just wonderful, with these little children, and it was just the way she was through life. Anyone who was struggling, she wanted to help them, and I guess with her, to people who looked at her from the outside, like her Instagram, and I guess the message there would be, don't believe everything you see on social media. Because if you looked at her Instagram, she just had it all. She was beautiful. She had a stable family. Her father and I have been together forever. Brother, every time she got bullied, I'd buy her a puppy, so she had 3 dogs. She just had a beautiful, happy environment. She had a long-term partner, and that was serious, and she was definitely talking about a future with him. So she had a great job. She'd been working there for 5 years in a private school in the western suburbs in Adelaide. Had a great job. She had a new group of friends who loved her and supported her. So she had everything. Everything.
Can you tell us about the day that you lost Maddy?
Yes. So Maddy and I were super close, I guess, because I'd been the one that she always went to through life. The night before she died, I had said to her, she said, I don't want to go out. I don't want to go out tonight. And I said, well, don't. Dad and I are just going out for a meal. Stay home with the dogs, watch a movie. And she said, no, if I don't go out with these girls, they're not going to ask me out anymore. And these were just acquaintances, really. They weren't super close with her. Mm-hmm. She'd sort of met them through her partner. And so it wasn't, that they'd been friends for any huge length of time. And I said, well, you're just acting like you were at school, fear of missing out, instead of thinking about who you're best to spend your time with. Anyway, she had gone out that night, and she had too much to drink and had got into a fight with the girl that she was with. And the girl, she got in her car. She made a bad choice, got in her car. The girl called the police, and the police pulled her over. So she would have been I know she was in her pajamas, so she would have been humiliated by even the fact that they had taken her in her pajamas into the police station. And she called me when they released her, and she wasn't driving dangerously or not. She'd broken the law and she'd lost her license. So she'd called me in the morning, and I was frustrated with her and I guess cross. And I said, I just can't believe you would make such a bad choice. And she said, you're a terrible mother. And she hung up, and that was the last I ever heard from her. I'd tried to contact her partner because we'd had the argument, well, not even an argument, but our words, weren't kind. And her partner said, I can't find her. No one knows where she is. And I was with my son during the day. I kept trying to contact her partner to see if he'd heard from her. Her father couldn't get hold of her. I couldn't get hold of her. When I came home, I didn't initially see, but my son said, I can see someone in the house with a suit. And my heart just, can't even. Sorry.
It's okay. Take a breath.
So,
that person was a police officer?
Yeah. And anyway, he left, and I had two of my friends there who, they're always there for us. Tends to be in a crisis, as good friends are, I guess. My husband told me that she'd gone. And I think until you hear those words, you can't really, believe that that's the truth. And I just remember screaming. Yeah.
Just as a mum, just having that incredible physical reaction, I feel guilty taking you back to that moment, but it's such
okay. I put myself out there, so that's okay. It's for a greater good.
How did you and your husband Grant and your son Lockie get through those days and weeks and months ahead?
When you lose someone, particularly to suicide, it is a whole nother level of pain, because you have almost like a survivor's guilt, I guess, of why couldn't I have stopped it? What could I have said? I had personally a lot of guilt because I was, to my knowledge, the last person to speak to her. And I, for months, had thought, what if I had have said something more positive to her, or, could I have stopped it? So there's just a lot of what ifs and what could have been, because she wasn't sick, because she didn't die in a car accident. It was her choice, and that is a really hard thing to reconcile. So much so that my husband, he had a heart attack a few weeks later. So we also had all of that stress on top of what we were all going through personally. He's fine now.
But obviously, do you believe that his heart attack was brought on by?
Yes. I mean, he was a fit, healthy, thin, not your typical heart attack candidate, but the nursing staff said that it was a broken heart. That,
wow.
But yeah, I guess from my perspective, you wake up every morning and you just think it's just so painful, and you think almost like, I wish I could just stay asleep so I just don't have to feel it when I wake up. And it was always worse at night or the early hours of the morning when it was dark. Darkness is it's harder. But then I had this dream one day. I have a Christian faith, so that has certainly helped me. But I used to pray, oh, please let this pain just for a minute just subside. And I'd had a dream early one morning, and I was in this dark cave, and there were rocks everywhere, and I could see this light in the distance, and it was like this beautiful big, as I got closer, this beautiful big white flower, and it had like a sort of like a halo around it, and I just remember feeling so happy that the darkness had gone, and I think that was from her, so you don't have to be in darkness anymore, Mum. I'll give you this flower. And that has stayed with me all the time. Every time I have a really bad day, I think about how happy I was to find this flower, and it's sort of helped me. I also journaled. That helped me. My mind felt like it was going to explode for those weeks and months afterwards. So writing my thoughts down and, positive things so that I could stop feeling the guilt myself, they helped. I've come to a place now where I think I did the best I could for her, and I was the best mother I knew how to be. And now for her, I will continue to do this as long as I can.
You were there every time she needed you. You really were. And so those words that she said to you in that, that dreadful last conversation weren't really obviously what she meant, because every step of the way you'd been with her for so long. So did it take some time, though, for that guilt to ease? Did you need to seek professional counselling, or how did you deal with that?
No, I've not to this day felt the need to seek professional help. I have a very strong faith that I just think her life had a higher purpose, and it's my job now to see that through. So it didn't stop my feelings of guilt, but bear in mind, over the years, I was her punching bag a lot of the time with her mental health. So some of the things that she would say to me at times would make a Wolfie blush. She could be brutal at times, but that I know was her mental health, and I think that last thing, as cruel as what it is to a mother, I think it was just her pain, and I try to reconcile that as for what it is. I didn't know the circumstances. If she had have said, "I need you, Mum," I would have been there in a heartbeat. You know, I would have, I said to her on several occasions, you know, when over the years when she talked about not wanting to be here, I said to her, you know, I would only ever give my life for you or your brother. That's how much I love you. And I think, you know, she did feel loved. It's just her own mental health and her pain at the end was too much. But I think, you know, for us, as a family unit, you know, you have to look to the future, and you can't live in the past. You know, it hurts. It's painful. You don't want to be there. It's best to look to the future and to try and do positive things, you know, for society, and that's why I try to do this.
2 years on, Debbie, I guess that moment and that day have never left you, but you're incredibly passionate about Breakthrough and the work that it does in research and trying to improve things for young people going through these tough times.
Yes. I was shown an article not long after Maddy died. This gentleman had lost his wife, and my girlfriend had said, "Oh, have you heard of this charity before?" And I said, "Oh, no, I haven't." And it was literally a light bulb moment. I thought, wow, mental health research, that has to be where funding goes, because I think, you know, if we could have programs in place like evidence-based programs in schools, evidence-based programs in different areas of the community, then we can make a difference. You know, these things would be, you know, evidence-based, so they have proof of working and helping. So, yeah, it became, I guess, a bit of a passion of mine to help them in whatever way I could. I feel passionate about advocating for them, and also, you know, just mental health and getting it out there so that it becomes a normal part of conversation, and so that people aren't scared of talking about it. And also, you know, with suicide, I think, you know, the year Maddy died, there were over 3,000 people in Australia that died, and it's the leading cause of death in our youth. I mean, it's just not acceptable at any level, and as a community, we all need to help. And people think, oh, well, how can I help? You know, what can I do? It's about having conversations. It's easy to do. You just look after your circle. You know, you ask the questions. How are you going? Are you okay? I've noticed, you know, you haven't been yourself lately. What can I do to help you? I mean, if someone has a sore back, you would do everything. You'd bring them meals, you know, whatever. It's the same with mental health. People just shouldn't be ashamed of it, shouldn't be scared of it, and should support each other, and maybe we can make a difference. And I guess with Maddy's story, I know a lot of people who have lost loved ones to suicide perhaps don't have an obvious, you know, cause. They can't see why these people took their lives. But I guess, you know, from my perspective, don't judge them. I mean, the pain that those people must have been feeling at that end point is just cruel. So let's not judge them. Let's get on and try to prevent it from happening in the future. And, you know, I think, you know, with Maddy, obviously hers came from other people, and she let them determine her self-worth. And I think it's about building a resilience in our youth to perhaps, you know, feel better about themselves so that other people can't make them feel inadequate, and to not believe social media, and to, you know, encourage our youth to love themselves and look after themselves and be kind to each other. And then maybe that will be a whole space of mental health that we won't have in the future.
Absolutely. That resilience point is such a good point. And just destigmatising mental health generally is critical, isn't it? Because in Maddy's case, you knew that she was struggling, but she just begged you not to seek help. So she just didn't want to be seen as flawed.
That's right.
And if we could change that, then we're going a long way, aren't we?
That's exactly right, yes. I completely agree.
Early intervention, which we hope to achieve with more and more research, is critical, isn't it?
Yes. I do believe that if there are good policies and programs in schools, particularly, as that's where Maddy's developed, I think that will go a long way, to supporting children and obviously then as adults, if you get that early intervention into schools, you can then perhaps prevent some mental health from occurring later in life. I mean, life is full of hurdles and ups and downs anyway. I mean, it's just, if we can just try and alleviate or eliminate one space of these hurdles, that would be a good thing.
You've written a book since Maddy's death. Tell us about that. What drove you to do that and what's it about?
When Maddy died, I had people who came to me and said, why did that happen? And I knew, I guess at some level perhaps, but it was not until her funeral that I actually, stated it. And I had people come to me and say, wow, that really helped me to understand what her mental health looked like. I also had people who, some people I really cared about who just couldn't forgive her for doing it, for taking her own life. They were angry at her. And I thought, no, don't be angry. You don't know what she suffered. And from there, I thought, okay, there's, I just wanted to be able to share with people what her mental health looked like. And when I was clearing out her things, I found 10 pages of information that we had prepared for the police when the bullying was at its worst. And my son had said to me, Mum, you should write a book. This really needs to be shared. You could help a lot of people if you shared Maddy's story. And I thought, yes, I will do that. I will start writing a book. And right up until the month before it was published, I wasn't sure I could go through with it because it is such a personal, and I'm fairly private, believe it or not, me speaking in a podcast. But
brave.
Yeah. Well,
you're brave. You're private, but you're also very brave.
Thank you.
I mean, because the book, part of what you found in those notes and part of what reflecting on Maddy's battle and her challenges was that she did fight so hard to stay, didn't she?
She did.
Many people might have seen her decision as selfish and how could she do that? But actually, she just was exhausted.
She was.
By it.
She was. And I think the shame for her of the things that happened on that last, everyone makes mistakes. I'm not condoning her behaviour, but, it was a mistake. It was a bad choice. And but I just think she couldn't face the shame of people thinking that she was flawed. And I think, I think from the book I just wanted people to understand her death did not define how her life was. She was really strong. And I just think people who take their own lives, they don't want to do that. It's just, I think with her it was a spur of the moment thing. I can't do this anymore and I'm out of here. That's what I believe. And I just think what needs to happen is we need to prevent people from getting to that desperation.
Yeah.
So that's where I think the research that Breakthrough does is just so important, so that we can try and stop it from happening.
One of the strong messages of the book is to be kind and to look out for each other. And you've launched an online business, which has that theme too. Tell us about that.
Oh, look, it was just really a little platform that I started just to get the message out there, and it's an avenue to raise a bit of money for Breakthrough and other charities. I mean, we do things to try and be kind to other people and places and causes, I guess. So it's just been a little platform to get the message out, but it's turned out to be this really loving little community that has grown and who are just a wonderful support to me. And it just it's like a big warm hug, really. You know, it's been a really lovely thing. So, and it is the avenue that I've been able to sell the book because I self-published. It's been an avenue to sell the book. So, yeah.
Maddy was so loved, wasn't she? There were, hundreds and hundreds of people at her funeral.
Yes.
Do you feel that by speaking out, you might be able to help other families to avoid going through this heartbreak?
I hope so. I mean, that's really been my end game, because I would do anything to save another parent from the heartache that losing their child through that child's choice, from suicide. I would just do anything to save another soul, another family, and I think that's what I wanted from the book, and I guess so that people could get to the end of that book and think, oh my goodness, I don't want to be the cause of that heartache for another human being. I'm going to start being kinder and more thoughtful and look after my circle, and I have come through the other side, I guess. I don't think you can ever, you wouldn't. She's with me all the time, so you never can get over it. But I just think this will be her legacy. I will continue to talk about her story as long as people want to hear it, and I hope that people who are suffering from mental health, this might prompt them to go and get help and talk to people about their mental health. And I think people would be surprised at how much other people want to help them. Perhaps for those children who might be bullying other children, they might just think twice and think, wow, I don't want to do that to anyone. And if I have had a lot of people reach out, and I know the book is doing some great things, helping people and inspiring people, and my job's done, really. I just want it to be her legacy. She was too beautiful to die in vain.
Debbie, thank you for your time, and thank you so much for sharing Maddy's story with us.
Pleasure.
Thank you for joining us as we share these extremely personal and important stories. If you would like to donate to Breakthrough Mental Health Research Foundation, please visit breakthroughfoundation.org.au. If anything spoken about in today's episode has been distressing for you, please contact Mental Health Emergency on 131465. We will have other resources in our show notes. Thank you for joining us. I'm Jess Adamson, and let's all tackle mental health head on.